It seems like everywhere you look, there's advertisements for GLP-1s for weight loss, or peptides for faster recovery and more vitality. Or is it hormone replacement therapy that we should be on? Well, who knows? Well, my guest today does. His name is Sam Tejada, and he is the founder of a national chain of wellness clinics called Liquivida. What I love about Sam is he talks about some of the free things, the things that don't cost money that can help improve your life. But then he also gets into the science of some of the supplementation that you can take, including IV therapy. What I most appreciate is his energy. So you are going to feel his energy through this podcast because I did when I was doing the interview. Enjoy. Sam is a dynamic author, a podcast host, and a wellness expert who is transforming the wellness landscape with his innovative approach to preventative health and IV therapy. As the founder of Liquivida and author of How to Win in Modern Wellness, Sam combines his expertise with his passion for empowering individuals to take charge of their own health. He also hosts A Healthy Point of View, a podcast where he dives into cutting-edge health trends, personal growth strategies, and actionable insights for living a balanced and thriving life. I love that we use the word thriving here. So, Sam, welcome to the ThriveMore podcast. How are you doing, my friend?
Roger, I'm excited to be here, brother. Thank you.
Yeah. So we both operate in a similar space, in the wellness space. I own Rockbox Fitness, a franchise that has about 50 locations nationwide for fitness. But you are approaching wellness from another angle, as importantly, an angle around the wellness perspective. But before we get into your business of Liquivida and what you do, it's always interesting for me and for the listeners to understand what attracted you to the wellness space to begin with. Like, how did you get here?
Yeah. So, with myself, I'm just a person who wants to help people, right? As you can see in the background, I have my fire department gear that I, served for about 12 years before I retired. I did retire because the business took off. And, the reason why I became a firefighter at such a young age, at the age of 20, is I wanted to have the most rewarding job possible. And what's not more rewarding than being a hero?
Yeah.
I was wrong about that, Roger. I was wrong. It was only about 10% of the emergency calls, the 911 calls, that actually were those, the heroic type of saves, right? Taking someone out of a burning building, a car accident. The rest of it was really me getting exposed to our broken healthcare system and taking people to this broken healthcare system, the ER, where I would just see them year after year just spiral down the toilet. Their whole health just spiraled down.
Yeah. So just these calls where somebody has a cardiac issue or a respiratory issue, but it sounds like, and a lot of that's probably due to lifestyle choices. And then, of course, they go into a broken healthcare system because.
Exactly. I
Yeah.
mean, so we live in a sick care medical system.
Yeah.
We wait
Yeah.
until people get sick to then try to get them better, right?
Yep.
So for me, being exposed to that and seeing it, and just being part of that system where people would call 911. Down here in Florida, everyone's a firefighter paramedic. So you're duly trained. So regardless if the call's a fire, a car accident, or a medical emergency, we respond.
Yeah.
So, when you're working in the fire department, you're in a specific station, in a specific neighborhood, in a specific city. So you get to know the residents in that city quite well, especially the ones that are calling 911, right? You're going to their homes and, doing rescue efforts and taking them to the hospital. So throughout that journey, the 12 years of me being in the fire department, you start seeing where someone calls 911. Then you come back 6 months later for the same emergency call to the same residents, to eventually you start noticing yourself going there every other month, to every single month, to every other week, to then every other day. And you're taking them to these so-called experts at the hospital. And don't get me wrong, our conventional traditional system's really good for an emergency situation. You cut your arm off by accident, right? You're having a heart attack. Those are great. But when you start seeing our medical system not address a lot of these chronic illnesses in advance, more of that proactive preventative approach, that's why I said, you know what? I got to spend my time doing things that are going to be truly rewarding, where I really see the outcome of my hard work. And that's why I said, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and get into the preventative health sector,
Yeah.
where I can help people not get sick.
Yep. Well, hopefully, not to get political, hopefully RFK Jr. starts to turn this ship for us, right? Starts to turn this ship, and as a society, we focus more on preventative health. So, legend has it that when you started your company, it was with like $500, and it's a smashing success now. But talk to me about how you decided I'm going to start a liquid IV business.
So, this wasn't even supposed to be like some kind of big company.
Yeah.
This was every firefighter, because we work 24 hours on, we're off for 48 hours. So every firefighter has some kind of side hustle on their day off. They either work at the hospital, they have some kind of side business, landscaping, painting, pressure cleaning, something. I decided to get into the health and wellness space. And what I started with was IV vitamin therapy. I got exposed to IV vitamin therapy, other clinics that were doing it in California, Colorado. And I found a doctor that had a beautiful wellness center that integrated Eastern and Western medicine together. They had everything from chiropractic, acupuncture, pain management, medical aesthetics. And just like most doctors, they typically have a few rooms in their office that's just collecting dust. And I told this doctor, says, hey, there's this IV therapy business that fits well with all the other modalities. Let me get one of these good sized rooms that are just collecting dust, and let me operate the business. You provide the medical direction. You have the front desk people. And what I'll do is I'll give you a percentage of the business that's being made out of this location. For that doctor, that chiropractor, that was like him winning the lottery, right? You got a young guy who's going to put in the time, effort, and money into growing this business venture that you're going to get 20% of.
Yeah.
So he committed to it. So I ended up going in there, and I had $500 to invest into it, and I started the business with $500. Fast forward to today, it's this multi-million-dollar company with wellness centers. We don't just do IVs now; we do a magnitude of different things in the biohacking and functional medicine space. And we have locations all throughout the nation, and we're also on the pharmacy side. We developed a proprietary product for IV nutrition, where we service over 4,000 doctors and provide them with all their IV vitamin therapy products throughout the nation.
Wow. Wow. How long has this journey been?
We're at about a little bit over 11 years right now.
Wow. Good for you.
Thank you.
It's America. That's America. I love that. I absolutely love that. And
That's the
you're helping.
American dream, baby.
Yeah. And you're helping people. Yeah. So, for my understanding is the business model to rent or acquire space within an existing clinic, or do you have standalone brick and mortars? What is the business model itself?
Yeah, so that we started with the integrated model where we put an IV lounge inside of the existing wellness practice. Now it's a bit different. We have brick and mortar facilities and retail locations by your big box stores. These are full wellness centers where we do everything from hormone optimization, comprehensive blood work. We have a lot of different diagnostic tools from DEXA scan, InBody to do body composition analysis. We do the IVs, obviously. We have a full medical aesthetics division. So we're doing the different Botox, the fillers, all of those things. So we have we put our patients through what we call the Vita journey, which is there's 5 pillars to that, which is wellness. There's regenerative medicine, where we use stem cell derived products and whatnot to help people with injuries. We have our medical weight loss division. We have our medical aesthetics division, and then our sexual health division for both males and females.
Wow. You're in the right market space, because every vertical you just mentioned is exploding. Like
It is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Especially with, you mentioned earlier with RFK Jr. I've been in this industry, the health and wellness functional medicine space for almost 2 decades right now. And this is the first time that I see such a potential for a huge shift in our medical system. With everything that RFK has been talking about, what he's actively doing since he got confirmed as the head of HHS, this is going to be a huge change for here in the United States, holding a lot of these big food companies accountable, holding our medical system accountable, putting research behind some of the things that we've been doing for years that's been getting ignored by the big medical system, unfortunately.
He is about to rattle some people's trees that need to be rattled. So if we go back 11 years on this great journey you've had, you have this one sublease space, let's call it, in that chiropractor's office, and then it starts to grow. you don't have to share every detail, but the beauty and the learnings and the lessons for the listeners are always in some of these details that happen and the turning points, both positive and you've been in business for 11 years. It ain't easy, right? And there's a lot of stumbling. Can you share some of some of the path that you took that allowed you to go from one location to maybe a second location or to a third, and then what were some of the big wins, but also where'd you stumble? And if you could go back and do it differently, what would you change because you've learned as a business person?
Yeah, I mean, Roger, you're absolutely right. There's a lot of stumbling, there's a lot of falling, and there's a lot of getting back up.
Yeah.
And honestly, there's probably more of that than the wins, right? You have to do a lot of that to get that big W. But part of it is you utilize those stumbles, those falls, and getting back up as a learning experience, right? You can't beat yourself up about it. It's I had a conversation with one of my business mentors the other day, and we were talking about how when you get more and more successful, you actually start seeing a lot of lawsuits come in. And it's actually like a sign of success. It's like, what is the process server going to come here and give me my next lawsuit? Right. And part of that, even if you're not going to succeed in the lawsuit of you being sued, right? You utilize that as a learning experience to beef up whatever documents you previously had in place, right? Like if I look at our initial franchise agreement, or if I look at our initial employee handbook here at the organization, it was about as thick as a magazine,
Yeah.
about as thick as a magazine, right? Now you look at it and this thing looks like an encyclopedia,
Sure.
and that's what happens throughout the years. You learn, you try to figure out how to protect yourself a bit better, how to actually structure things a little bit differently. So listen, early on, I had some sour partnerships, right? Where I was putting liquiditas in other clinics, or even developing full wellness centers with certain partners. And I learned from it. As a matter of fact, I wasn't planning to do any franchising. The reason I ended up doing franchising is to be well protected throughout the process as a franchisor and do these deals under an actual franchise agreement.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny you talk about lawsuits. When you get your first one, it rocks you because, you're not used to being sued. And as you know, anybody can sue anybody for anything. Doesn't even have to have basis for it. Like there could be no basis, but it's still going to cost you money because you still have to defend it. You're going to win, but you have to defend it. I was listening to some other podcast and learned that at any one time, Richard Branson, of Virgin, all those brands, at any one time, any day of the year, he has actively 125 pending lawsuits against him.
Wow.
So it's all relative, right? It's all relative. And it's unfortunately it's kind of this day and age. People can be litigation happy. This segment is sponsored by Rockbox Fitness Franchising. Take control of your destiny and join the boutique fitness revolution with Rockbox Fitness. If you're ready to make a real impact in your community and own your own business that empowers people to achieve their best life, then Rockbox is the opportunity you've been looking for. They provide comprehensive support from site selection, upfit, training, and turnkey marketing, so you can open your studio with confidence and a strong recurring revenue member base. Visit rockboxfitness.com and click on franchise opportunities to learn more about this exciting venture in the fast-growing boutique fitness industry. It's time to turn your passion for fitness and for business into a thriving venture. As you start to expand the brand, when did you realize, one day you're driving home from work or you're driving to work or something, and you realize I've got something here. Like this is going to be even bigger than I first thought. When was that epiphany?
When I started the first location inside of that chiropractor's wellness center, and we were doing barely any marketing. I think we did a few Google pay-per-click campaign ads, and this is about 11 years ago, where there wasn't the crazy algorithms that are in place now. And I mean, here in South Florida, South Florida is a very vain type of place. Everyone's all about their health, their fitness, their beauty. And I started noticing people drive to the clinic from about an hour and a half away.
Wow.
At that point in time, I said, you know what? If I got some very influential and affluent people driving an hour and a half to come get these vitamin IV drips, I think we got something here.
Yeah.
And then that's where I said, you know what, it's time to really, be true boots on the ground. Let's put the pedal to the metal and get this thing ramped up as a company.
Yeah. So what would somebody expect? They come into, and you named 5 kind of verticals or pillars really of the business. But if we stick to IV, because it is something that most of us, unless you were a fighter or something, and you'd rehydrate, most of us would only get an IV if we were in the hospital, right? Or in an ambulance. And IVs and the benefits have really started to become more known in the lay press and just the average person. Just speak to some of the benefits that people will, not even the benefits, the feeling, right? Because that's all people care about. Like, I don't care what's in that bag. How am I going to feel? How will they feel after one of the given treatments? And I'm sure there's many different treatments, vitamins, and I want you to talk about NAD also, if we can, because I'm fascinated by some of that research. What are how should they expect to feel after they visit one of your locations?
So a few things. So first part of your question is about the IVs versus what we've been so used to, which is more of oral supplementation. So when it comes down to oral supplementation, we never disregard oral supplementation because there are certain supplements that you can only take orally and can't go intravenously, right? There's certain fat soluble vitamins and whatnot that can't go intravenously because it's fat soluble. So the reason why we go intravenously is that most of us have a serious digestive issue. It could be something as basic as acid reflux. You got people who have IBS. I mean, our gut is, most people, their gut is not where it should be. And that's because of a lot of the things that we get exposed to, toxins, the foods we're eating, and our digestive system is off. So, most of the time, when you're taking vitamins, minerals, and amino acids orally through oral supplementation, the reason you have to take it every single day and sometimes 2 to 3 times a day is that for you to get the actual therapeutic dosage, you have to feed your body so much because the digestive route can only absorb X amount of nutrients at once. When we go intravenously, we bypass the digestive route and we get 100% absorption at the cellular level, right? So what does that mean? So we have the ability to actually hit higher therapeutic dosages to get a specific effect going intravenously instead of going orally by mouth.
Yeah.
So I'll give you an example of that. Vitamin C. Vitamin C, maximum you can take about 3,000 milligrams at once orally. Once you start going above that, it starts to irritate your digestive system. You'll get nauseated. You'll potentially get diarrhea. So it's not fun, right? When you go intravenously, we can go up to 100,000 milligrams. Now, we're not going that aggressive on the typical person. Those are going to be more of our sick patients with autoimmune issues, cancer, etc., where we're utilizing it therapeutically a little bit differently. But it's just showing you the difference of 100,000 milligrams versus 3,000 milligrams when you go intravenously. Now, how do you feel? So, our typical wellness IV drips, first thing that you're going to feel is a boost of energy. The type of energy you get, it's not like chemically induced energy with these little drinks that you get at the gas station. This is natural energy based off of the nutrients that your body needs. So the type of energy you get, it's not this jitteriness type of energy. It's more of a good sense of liveliness. You feel awake, you feel fresh, you feel good. The best way that I can explain it is think about on a Saturday where it's a beautiful blue skies and you're at the beach and it's beautifully and sunny and you just feel fresh and good and energetic. That's the type of feeling you get from these IVs.
Oh, I love it. I love it. If we can pivot, stay on IVs, if we can pivot to NAD and maybe explain to the listeners and me um, really what NAD is, why it is becoming so popular among people that are health enthusiasts, and what it does.
So NAD, I love NAD.
Yeah.
I take NAD actually 2 to 3 times a week.
Yeah.
Now I don't do the intravenous one because I don't have much time to do it.
Yeah.
When you do it intravenously, your typical dose, which is 500 milligrams, takes about 4 hours to do it. I do the subcutaneous injections where I inject it in my stomach with a very small needle, and I do 100 milligrams 2 to 3 times a week. And for me, I feel the same effect, right?
Okay.
NAD, it's classified as the brain reboot, right? Where basically it just fires up your brain. NAD is fantastic for cellular repair. It has a huge benefit to your overall health, especially when you're talking about health span and longevity. So NAD is one of those things where you're hearing everybody talk about it. You're hearing the celebrities talk about it. It's become mainstream at this point. So it's a fantastic IV drip that we offer. It's a fantastic intramuscular or IM injection. This is something that's going to boost energy. It's going to help with mental clarity, focus. It's going to make you what I tell people, it makes me sharp as a tack. I hear better, see better, I speak better. It's just like, it's the true brain reboot, man. It's all the hedge fund guys were doing it early on, and there's a reason why they were doing it. They're just like fired up. And the best part about it, it's all natural nutrients that are doing it.
Yeah. And I've heard, I didn't realize, I knew it was a little longer treatment when you're doing it intravenously. But I've also heard that you also just have to know, look, this is not going to be the most comfortable process while you're getting it, but within an hour after you've completed the treatment, you start to feel amazing. But there is a little discomfort during the actual treatment. Is that correct? And that's dose dependent from what I've heard.
Yeah, so if it goes a little bit too quickly, and this is the reason why you have to drip it over 4 hours, right?
Gotcha.
If it drips a little bit too quickly and you get more of an aggressive dose at that immediate moment, you get a serious flush. Some people call it the feeling of impending doom. It's not attractive at all when
Yeah.
people say that, right? But if you do it with someone who knows what they're doing and can control the drip and the dosage that's going into you, you'll have no issue. You know,
So
but yeah, there
it's
could
people pushing
potentially be
too much too fast is what's problem is
right.
what's
You could
okay.
get that very flush feeling. It's a very uncomfortable feeling. Once you do it for a while and you get that feeling, you'll understand it and you'll actually know it's like, okay, well, that's NAD.
So if asking for a friend here, if if you're a 54-year-old male and you were looking for a combination of therapies that would make you feel more vitality, that would make you have more energy, feel refreshed, um, recover faster, because when you get to be 54, you don't recover quite as fast when you work out and whatnot. What would be those 3, 4, 5, 6, I don't know, whatever it is, things that you would say, look, there's a lot of stuff you can do, but if you really want to focus on these benefits you just mentioned, Roger, you really want to be taking these 3, 4, 5, 6, or 7 things. What would those be?
Well, the first three that I'm going to mention are actually completely free, and they're probably the most important things that you have to focus on,
Okay.
right? Which is movement, so exercise,
Yep.
nutrition, what you're putting into your body, and then sleep, because that's where you recover.
Yeah.
So those three things are completely free. And listen, I talk to people from all walks of life, and the first thing, oh, the biohacking, the wellness, it's so expensive. Free. These three things.
Yeah.
Once you focus on it. Now, to add to that, to help with the recovery process, the next step, the number 4 thing that I would say is understand your body and understand your health data. How do you do that? There's certain wearables that you can wear throughout the day, right? I wear an Oura ring wherever I go. So it gives me my sleep data. And you can see it's lit up there, green, right? So the Oura ring gives you a lot of data. You can wear an Apple Watch. There's the Whoop. So it's always important to understand your body and how it's performing. So then you can correct those things based off of actual data of your health. Other data that you should get, you should do a body composition analysis. Most people, they get on a scale. Okay, a scale tells you total weight. What is your weight made up of? How much fat do you have out of that 150 pounds? How much lean mass do you have of that 150 pounds? How much of it is intracellular and extracellular water? So doing a body composition analysis with either like an in-body eVault or a DEXA scan is going to give you that data. Doing comprehensive blood work to see what type of nutrients you're deficient in, right? Looking at your blood work to see if you have any hormone deficiencies. Understand your body, understand your body's data. Then at that point, once we have all of that data from your body, then we could go ahead and make certain recommendations of supplements that you can take, peptides, hormone optimization, or anything else. Now, for most people, some of the typical things are we offer a magnitude of different nutrients or IV drips that most people can benefit from. We do have some kind of different peptide therapies, which help with the recovery process. A lot of our professional athletes take the peptide therapies. And then, obviously there's other type of modalities like hormone optimization,
Mhm.
especially when you're talking about someone in their 40s, 50s, or 60s. What ends up happening by the time you reach age 30, every year past age 30, your hormones start to decrease about 2 to 3%.
Yep.
So, which there's not an issue with that, right? We can always age how our great grandparents did, but with today's technology, you can age in a more proficient way where you can still have vigor and vitality.
Yeah. Yeah. Better living through chemistry, man. I'm all about that. I'm all about that. And I just want to say, Sam, like I just want to give you full credit right now. I asked a really open-ended question, and you could have very easily said, "Oh, well, make sure you jump on NAD, this and this, and we provide all that for you." Like you didn't. You said, "Here's three free things." I just really respect the way you answered that. Here's three free things, and that's the benchmark of everything. Before I could even tell you, you need to get blood work, you need to get a scan. Like I just really have a strong appreciation for the holistic approach of how you answered that question versus, well, take this, this, and this, like so many people will do, man. Props to
Thank
that.
you. I appreciate it.
I'm going to ask you about peptides because I have, there's a trainer, instructor that works at one of the rock boxes here locally. The guy is jacked to the nines, ex MMA fighter. And I'm asking like, all right, there's no way that's 100% natural, brother. Cause like I know you and you've put like 30 pounds of muscle on. And he said, he's like, no roids. He goes, but I am taking peptides. And then he named, this peptide and like 2 letters and 5 numbers. And then this peptide, 2 letters and 5, for the layperson, what exactly is a peptide and what is it doing for him and what it would do for us?
So peptides are an amino acid fragment,
Okay.
right? That basically signals in your body for it to do something in particular. So there's peptides for weight loss, there's peptides for hormone optimization, there's peptides for medical aesthetics, there's peptides for gut health. There's peptides for everything. Your body naturally produces over 7,000 peptides. So what we do through science is we have the ability to figure out what peptide your body needs for the specific effect that we're trying to accomplish. So a lot of people hear about these GLP-1 drugs.
Mhm.
There's some brand names for them out there like
Sure.
Ozempic and Wegovy and some of these other ones. That's a peptide. That's called a glucagon-like peptide. So that basically stimulates your body to lose weight through certain mechanisms. Now there are peptides that help you put on that lean mass, like the trainer guy that you were talking
Yeah.
about. So there's peptides, oral peptides like MK677. There's peptides for growth hormone releasing peptides that help boost up your growth hormone levels, which will help you get a lot more lean and put on lean mass as well too. There's peptides like CJC epimorelin, the 1295, the CJC 1295, fantastic peptide. There's even a better one for growth hormone, which I use personally myself. It's called tesamorelin. It's an actual FDA approved peptide that's out there for certain indications. But that one's fantastic for weight loss and also putting on lean mass. And then there's other peptides also for like inflammation or injuries that you might have, like BPC 157. It's a peptide that we typically recommend everyone to get on for at least a few months, especially when you're starting your journey, your health and wellness journey. But yeah, there's a magnitude of different peptides. I don't recommend to get on so many peptides at once because if you do have some kind of side effect, you want to be able to nail it down and figure out which peptide is causing that. So
Yep.
my recommendation is to start off with maybe 1 or 2 peptides from there, see how it goes, and then add certain peptides throughout your journey.
And when you said side effect, what are it's funny, I spent 25 years, you're talking to a guy who's all about health. I love this conversation, really enjoying this. My first 25 years of professional life was working for pharmaceutical companies. I started at Eli Lilly and then went to a few different companies and rose up the ladder. And now I'm not against big pharma. I'm really not because they have life-saving drugs. You as a firefighter and paramedic, you use some life-saving drugs that we need. It's just that industry is built on treating people, never curing them, right? If you cure them, you lose a customer. And that I'm philosophically against. So it's funny, I always, because side effects can be okay, because, some side effects create the desired effect. It's the adverse event really that we don't want, because there's nothing good about anything that's adverse. Are there some adverse events, adverse effects of some of the peptides you just named, and what would those be?
There could be, right? There could be certain adverse effects where you could have irritations on the injection site that can become very uncomfortable, where it basically becomes an anaphylactic reaction. So, obviously, if you're one of those people, the 1 out of 10,000 that ends up, getting this effect to, then that's something that we would have to stop the usage of that peptide. It's not the peptide that's causing it. It's usually the benzoyl alcohol or whatever preservative they put there in that multi-dose vial that typically causes that.
Yep.
But for the most part, there's other things that can pop up, potential cardiac dysrhythmias or things of that nature. And sometimes it's that you have to balance out other systems of the body first and correct them before getting on the peptide. So this is where you really need a true qualified healthcare professional, putting you through this process.
Yeah.
When you have the guy at the gym who's going to the back of his trunk and, trying to sell you some of these peptides that they got off the research clinic website,
Sure.
that's a problem.
Yeah.
Doing blood work and being monitored throughout the process, to me, is extremely important.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's just we have to talk about it. The GLP-1s, which the last data I saw, 6% of all adults are on a GLP-1. That's a lot of people. It's 18 million people, right? Where's your stance? And I don't want to talk about true diabetics, because it can help them. It definitely can help them, at least in the short term, if it makes some lifestyle changes. But there's not the 18 million people on them are not all diabetics, and we know that. But I earlier said better living through chemistry. What's your experience? What's your stance? And where do you see this going within our country, these GLP-1s and the usage of them?
So, initially, this was approved clinically for type 2 diabetes. Today, it's clinically approved for obesity,
Mhm.
right? Adolescent obesity and also pediatric obesity. Now, my stance on it is the medication works great if it's done properly under the right medical supervision, and you're being monitored throughout the process, because there's certain things that can happen as you lose the weight that you don't want to happen, right? That's going to work completely against you. And I'll give you an example of it. When you're losing weight, what kind of weight are you losing? Are you losing muscle weight or are you losing actual fat? This is the importance of doing some of the diagnostics I talked about earlier, where you do a body composition analysis as a baseline, and then you're trending your results throughout your weight loss journey on a DEXA scan or an M-body machine, where you actually see what kind of weight you're losing. Because if you're losing lean mass, that's the worst thing you could have for
Sure.
longevity purposes, right? You
Yeah.
you need to have muscle. That's what helps you live a healthier and longer life. So the GLP-1 drugs are great if they're utilized properly, making sure you're doing the blood work, making sure you're doing the body composition analysis. Now, you should never utilize this drug as a crutch, right? It's a good kickstart to your weight loss journey, but you still have to make the lifestyle changes. The reason why most people are obese is because their lifestyle is off. They're drinking too much. They're exposing themselves to toxins. They're eating the wrong foods. It's just not living a healthy lifestyle. They're not moving their body. They're not exercising. So if you utilize it to kickstart your weight loss journey, but you start making those lifestyle adjustments, then you're not going to be on this medication as a crutch long term. You could get off of it after 2 to 3 months, and then just focus on living a healthier life.
Yeah. Which goes back to the first three things you said: move your body, be mindful of your nutrition, and get a good night's sleep.
Right.
Good. Yeah, I love that. This episode of the podcast is brought to you by ThriveMore Autopilot. You know, the latest data shows a large amount of small to mid-sized business owners are living paycheck to paycheck, and that is not why you started a business in the first place. We all start businesses to create the freedom in our lives that we want and to give us options. But to do that, you need more leads, and you need to turn those prospects into long-term paying customers. Well, the solution is ThriveMore Autopilot. ThriveMore Autopilot is the turnkey solution to take the stress and the hard work out of new customer acquisition, which is the lifeblood of any small business. ThriveMore Autopilot works on your behalf to generate a waterfall of new leads through various channels, to nurture those leads with proprietary AI solutions that mimic human interaction, to sell memberships and help you increase your monthly recurring revenue, and they even provide you coaching and your team coaching on the most effective sales techniques and give you a community of other like-minded business owners. ThriveMore Autopilot is how you scale your business without stress and the relentless phone calls and texts and reach outs to the prospects to get them to show up for that first appointment or to show up to that call. So learn how ThriveMore Autopilot can help you win big by going to thrivemore.ai. That's thrivemore.ai. ThriveMore Autopilot, the strategic partner for small to mid-sized business owners to help you scale and live the life of your dreams. In your line of business, what's coming down the pike, so to speak, that you may have read about or heard about or know about that, again, the listeners and me as a layperson wouldn't know, but you're kind of excited about? There's, and I think you have a proprietary thing you even talked about too. If you can share what that does, at least, not any trade secrets, but what that does, that'd be cool.
Well, I think the biggest thing right now is with what you see happening here in the United States in the health sector with RFK Jr., being placed in that leading role with HHS. So what you're going to see now is you're going to see a huge shift of what's happening with the big food companies and overall, the medical health. So you're going to start seeing more of these different testing modalities to see exactly what's happening internally in your body. And some of these testing modalities that, some clinics are already offering, and we offer it, is toxins, right? Doing certain testing to see what type of toxins are in your body. So, I have a group of doctors, very, very well educated, knowledgeable doctors, very well respected, world renowned, that the first thing they'll tell you is that the root cause of disease formation is toxins.
Mm.
That's crazy, right?
Yeah.
It's toxins. And what happens is, and they have the data to support it, what ends up happening is that these toxins will go into your body. And what they do is they attach themselves as a DNA adduct to certain genes inside of your body, which when it does that, it causes what's called a gene expression change. So it changes the expression of that gene. And I'll give you an example of what a gene expression is. So all of us as humans, we have tumor suppressing genes. So those genes should always be turned on, right? So if a tumor starts to develop, the tumor suppressing gene suppresses that tumor from developing into like a cancer. So what happens is if a toxin gets attached to that gene, it'll actually turn off the gene expression where now the tumor suppressing gene is off. And what happens at that point? Disease develops, cancer develops, and now people have to go through the radiation and the chemotherapy, and you potentially can die. So this happens with all kinds of other diseases. We're seeing this with Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, all kinds of autoimmune issues, that the actual root cause is a gene expression change, which what ends up happening is your mitochondrial health gets affected throughout this process, right? Where it's causing a lot of oxidative stress. We've heard about inflammation, right? Aging is what they call it now. It's where you have so much inflammation that's making you age quicker. So you're going to hear a lot about this, and you're already starting to hear about the toxic foods. But what is happening to people because of all these toxins in the foods, all these toxins in the crops that are out there, the pesticides and everything else, and what's in our environment? This is where the science is going to really, really show exactly what's happening. The next few years, at least the next 4 years, while we have the administration that we currently have now, you're going to start seeing a lot of the science pop out where people they're going to show you, hey, these diseases are being developed because of these toxins.
I think when people realize what is actually in their food and what they're eating, what they're drinking, it's going to scare the hell out of them.
Oh,
And I don't think that RFK is going to hold back. He is going to, you're drinking plastic. Just so you know, you're swallowing plastic right now. Yeah, yeah. Hey, I'd love for you just take a minute or two. If people pick up a copy of your book, How to Win in Modern Wellness, what should they expect? What are they going to glean from that book if they read that book?
So what they can expect out of it. So what I ended up doing in the years that I've been in business, I've built some tremendous relationships with other leaders in the industry, other CEOs that are my competitors in the industry, doctors that are out there that specialize in the biohacking and functional medicine space. And what I did with those relationships, this was a couple years ago. I basically gave every single one of them a chapter in the book. And what we're doing is we're talking about how we're winning together in this world of modern medicine. Modern wellness, to be exact. The name of the book is How to Win in Modern Wellness. So you're going to get a lot of information of the different services and modalities that are being offered at these different wellness clinics, how they're doing it. If someone has an entrepreneurial spirit who wants to get into the wellness industry, this is going to be a great book for you because you're going to hear from people that started from nothing to building some of these companies that are valued at over $1 billion.
Yeah.
So it's very motivational, especially when you have the ability to connect with those individuals in the book.
I love that. The fact that you said it, even some of my competitors, that shows you have an abundance mindset versus scarcity and, the pie, I got to get my slice of the pie. I love that. I mean, that's the way to attack it. So my flip question on that is going to be, you've been really successful. You're going to be even more successful. There's not a doubt in my mind. I don't even need to ask. I know that you do personal development and you read and you listen and whatnot. What's one book that you could recommend to the listeners that you read? And you can't pick your own book. That's cheating. But when you read, you set it down, and it could have been 20 years ago, Sam, whenever, but you set it down and you said, whoa, that I'm going to change the way I do something because of that book. What would you recommend to the listeners?
I'm a really big relationship guy, and how I mentioned, my book has 17 chapters of my competitors.
Yeah.
And you only do that based off of building relationships and not going the cutthroat mentality.
Yep.
The book I recommend, I read it over 20 years ago. And you've probably read it as well too. It's called How to Win Friends and Influence People. Right? It's
Best
just
one.
a very powerful book that really teaches you how to connect and how to get that person into that circle of yours and
Yep.
understand what you're trying to get across.
Yeah. It's for relationships, for business, it's the Bible. It's the Bible for self-development. Yeah, for sure. It's the last two questions, and then I want people to find out how they can learn more about you, follow you, if they're interested in getting into business with your franchise. I want to make sure they can do that. But the last two questions before we do that, one, and I ask these to every guest. I've asked these 125 times or something so far. If we fast forward to the end of your life, which the way you're living is going to be a very long, healthy life, but we finally get to the end, and we're at your funeral, and you're looking down from above, and there's a loved one reading your eulogy. And Sam, they can choose three words to describe you, to describe the impact you had on them or on the world, and it doesn't have to make a phrase or a sentence or anything. Just three descriptors. What three words do you hope they choose based on how you've impacted them in the world?
I would say change, health, and wealth.
Man, that was quick.
Yeah.
Most people they think about it. You've thought about this before. I love that. I
Yeah,
love that.
because and I'll tell you why.
Yeah.
I've always said that if you want to see a certain change in your lifetime, you have to put yourself in a position of power, leadership position of power to make that change. You can't just go out there and protest and ask for the change. At least that's not me. I'm going to put myself in that position where other people can protest to influence me to make the change, but I'll be the guy making that change. So change is extremely important, especially because a lot of things become very antiquated, especially with new research coming out. You got to make the change for the better of the people. Health is always that priority. I always tell people, we talk about wealth, and the reason why I said wealth after health is that without health, who cares about wealth? You could have all the money in the world, but I can guarantee you one thing, you won't exchange your health for it. So health is going to be at the top of the list. Everybody wants it for themselves and their family. And then wealth, and it's not just about the outer wealth, the monetary wealth, but there's also a part that goes along with the health side, which is your inner wealth, right? When you love yourself and you're just fulfilled with your inner wealth, nothing else matters at that
Yeah.
point.
Yeah. Ah, why wisdom? That was wisdom right there. I love it. I love it. And then again, second to last questions, because I want to ask you your contact info. If I were to give you a magic wand, Sam, and you could wave that magic wand tonight, and we wake up tomorrow, and with that magic wand, you have made one material change to the way the world is, the way people are, the way the world works, whatever it may be. But you can wave that magic wand tonight. When we wake up tomorrow morning, how is the world different according to Sam?
Um, I think the route that I would go is the mission that I'm trying to fulfill with the health and wellness side. I'd love to see it accessible to everyone in our country here in the United States. So, people having access to these diagnostics, people having access to the supplementation, people having access to everything else that we talk about, to the non-toxic foods, to the clean environment, the things that are really going to help them live a healthy life. That's what I would like to see with that magic wand.
Love it. And with health, they can build wealth. They can do all the other things, have good relationships. Yeah. Yeah. All right. Most important question. And this has been a great interview. Like you, I dig your energy, man. I love it.
Thank you.
How can people connect with you, follow you, and as importantly, find out how they could potentially buy a franchise and get into this space and help other people?
Yeah, absolutely. So you could Google me, right?
Yeah.
Sam Tejada, and you'll see everything that pops up. Um, I'm very active on social media on Instagram. My handle there is Sammy, that's SAMMY _ and then my last name Tejada, TEJADA. And if you're interested in learning more about Liquivida, you can go to our website. It's liquivida.com. And we're all over online, man. You'll be able to tune into the podcast as well too. We're on every podcast streaming site, Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts. And you'll hear some of the biggest and smartest experts from around the world that fly into the studio, and I get to interview them. So, and that's free education about health and wellness.
Yeah, super cool. We'll put all those in the show notes so that the listeners, if they're driving, when they hear this or whatever, they can just click on that when they get to a stoplight. So
Awesome.
man, thank you for joining. Thank you for your time. And honestly, I'm most grateful for what your mission is and what you're trying to do to help people in our country, because we have gone the wrong direction. And it's time to reverse it. So kudos to you, man.
Thank you, Roger. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
You betcha. Thank you for tuning in to the ThriveMore podcast. Don't forget to take a look at the show notes for any of the resources that we mentioned during the podcast. And if you haven't already, be sure to hit the subscribe button and turn on your notifications so you have access to the latest and the greatest. You can connect with me on any of the socials at Real Roger Martin. And be sure to check out our website, thrivemorebrands.com. There you'll find information on the brands we support and information on franchising. Thanks again for tuning in.